Welcome to another edition of Pulp Nonfiction. Today we'll be chatting with Heather Yuzik of the Bank of Montreal, BMO. We're going to get to the dollars and cents of this pandemic, the finances, and dentistry in general. Now, Heather, you've been with the Bank of Montreal for 10 years.
That's right, just about 10 years.
Yeah, so you started when you were a teenager.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, they got you early.
I like you.
You always want the banker to like you.
Yeah. Well, and I hope I'm pretty likable too, so easy to deal with.
Absolutely. And so you deal with dentists, chiropractors, other healthcare people, and you're with the Bank of Montreal, and not everyone in this group is Canadian. So the Bank of Montreal, founded in 1817, originally Montreal Bank, and was pretty
203 years old.
Yes.
We've been around a long time. First bank in Canada.
Yes, no, absolutely. The official bank of Lower Canada, which was Quebec, and it was pretty much the official Bank of Canada up until the formation of the Bank of Canada in 1935.
Right. So we know what we're doing.
Yes.
Lots of experience. Lots of wisdom.
You finance the railroads, right?
So things moving.
Yeah. So the fourth biggest bank in Canada, 45,000 employees, 12 million customers, eighth biggest bank in North America, and they headhunted you.
That's right.
There we go.
Don't forget our bank down in the U.S. is Harris Bank. So we have, so for the U.S. people, that's an option for them as well. So a bit of a different program. Hey, I see you've got service there.
Oh yeah.
That's a nice luxury.
Yes. It allows PS4 time, right? You can have the PS4. It's a nice sunny day, but I want my cup of tea.
Yeah, there you go. You're all set.
Yeah. So, speaking of which, this pandemic, we got to look like asbestos removal men inside the office. It's hit dentistry hard, and compared to a lot of other healthcare professions, probably going to hit us harder afterwards, because I've heard the chiropractors in British Columbia are going back, and they pretty much have no restrictions. Just don't cough or sneeze while you're getting your back adjusted. But pretty much, and meanwhile, dental offices are kind of looking like Dexter, bad episodes of Dexter. So, from your perspective, the banking perspective, the dentists aren't buying Cadillacs at the moment.
No, I would say not. I would say it's batten down the hatches time and dip into the savings for the time being. Yeah. So, I would say that the dentists who are highly leveraged, maybe those who have extended out, first-time buyers or aggressively growing in that stage, they're going to really feel it. Whereas those who have taken care of some of the debt, have put aside savings, have high staff loyalty, really invested into their clinic, efficient operations, that they will fare better. So we're seeing a real mixed bag right now.
Yeah, I know it's quite interesting, and I'm not sure if many of the listeners outside of the Lower Mainland knew what practices were going for in the Lower Mainland. When I graduated from dental school, the average practice was going between 40 and 60% of annual billings. And this time last year, your Joe average practice was going for close to 100% of annual billings, wasn't it?
Oh, I'd say even higher in urban areas.
Yeah.
We often saw well beyond gross revenues, maybe up to 175%. So it depended on the attributes of the practice and the location, but there's high competition because of course there's less supply. That was pre-COVID days. Now everything has turned on its head, but the valuations were out there and the purchase prices were being driven up all the time. So I think we're seeing a halt to that for the time being. it's likely that valuations will, I mean, everything's just stopped in its tracks. So valuations will be reviewed. And I've seen, for the most part, purchases that were in progress have stopped because people, of course, don't want to be paying more for a practice than what the valuation is going to end up being. And that's largely unknown at this point. So it's really a wait and see game.
Yes, no, absolutely. I was listening to two older endodontists than me. There's a couple of them still alive. And they were saying that when they started their practice, overhead was 15%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not the case now. And it's,
No.
and a few months ago, it will be a lower percent than what it'll be a few months from now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the expenses are being cut everywhere possible and plans are being made. So I think that when the regulations and requirements are rolled out and we see what the expectation is for dentists in BC, then we'll have a better idea, and even better again, say 3 months from then, because we can at least take a look at the revenues and see how they're affected. And that again will be impacted by the ability of each dentist to manage their operation. So it's going to be very different for each individual operation. Each one is unique in the makeup of the staff, the talent that's there, you know, for management, the talent of the dentists in managing and efficiencies, things like that. So at BMO, what we do is we spread everything on the table, and we take a look, and that's how we assess our relationships and come in with our structure. So I think that we're not a cookie cutter bank, and so that actually bodes well for practices, because we don't just look at the high level numbers, but we dig to see what's really happening. So I think that's really worked out well for a lot of dentists, especially if they're facing situations that are not the norm. Say they find, well, this is kind of the norm, but say pre-COVID days again, there is a demo clause that's in their lease. We don't automatically just put that aside, but we look at it and we assess it, and we say, in the whole picture, what can be done? What will we project that this will look like, and how can we then come to the table? So I think that's really a hallmark of BMO, is the relationship and taking a step back, using a roundtable approach, and bringing all the talent that we have in the bank to bear on each situation.
Yeah, and a demo clause, you're meaning a demolition clause, right?
A demolition clause.
Yes,
yeah.
and so for people,
I try not to use the lingo and.
No. I know what a demo clause is.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if they use the same clause in New Zealand or U.S. or Ireland or England. Anyway, demolition clause is if you rent a space, the landlord can give you pretty short notice, and the building's coming down. And that's not so bad if you're a real estate agent and that's your office. But if you're a dental office, of course, it's catastrophic because you got plumbing and electric, and that does affect you greatly. And so yes, as a dentist, you don't want a demolition clause if you can at all avoid it, because it's really expensive to move.
Yeah, and yet it's becoming more and more common. So we'll see what happens going forward. We're talking past right now, but it's just an example of how we approach things. And I think that's significant in these days, because you can't bring that same approach. The risk has increased, and I think that's something that we all are aware of. The risk as defined as being the unknown, and so. So right now we're kind of riding the waves of change, and yet at the same time, I think what needs to be kept in mind is that your banker wants the same thing as you. You have the same goal, and that's to succeed. Yeah. They want you to succeed, because then everybody wins. And so everybody is coming to the table with the same objective, and that's to get you to a place where you're successful. So, I mean, that's the attitude that we go in with.
Now,
I mean, we can only do so much at times, but at the same time, we're doing everything we can and providing resources wherever possible as well, and advice.
yeah, and specific plans that BMO has for dentists that or programs or advice or tips or anything like that shine compared to the other banks. How does BMO shine compared to those other guys? Hey.
Well, again, I think it's our roundtable approach, so that
Okay.
we're not doing that painting with a broad brush. Everybody's individuals, and honestly, I would say, really the types of people that BMO has set out to hire over the years has played a significant role in our approach and in our corporate culture. In that we, even though we're numbers people, we're a bank, and that's what we deal in is numbers. People are not numbers, and we see that, and we see the person. So as much as we see top line, bottom line revenues, we see a family, we see people, we see a person getting close to retirement that's suddenly in trouble, and that matters. And so when you come to a situation and you treat people with respect and dignity, and you seek to resolve issues to the best of your ability using the tools around you, I just don't think you can go wrong. I know there's times in the past where I have been able to come in and create a resolution, and there's been times when I've not been able to. And yet I've always found people have understood, and they know that we are doing everything within our power to create a win-win. So I really think that differentiates us. Also, the attitude we come in with as advisors, as sharing information. So for instance, in this situation, every time something comes across our desks that may shorten the time between patients, for instance, for dentists, we'll share that, because that's a potentially positive impact in the industry. Or
you've not had a lot to share recently on that front.
Well, the
Probably.
relief programs rolled out. I mean, that's been something helpful.
No, I was joking about shortening the time between patients. Yeah.
Well, negative pressure.
Yes.
That's one area that I've just been exploring, and it looks like it's got potential to drop the time frame maybe to even 18 minutes between patients, which we don't. When we see the information, we can share it, and then it's up to dentists to explore it further. But at least we're sharing it, and we're making it known in the industry if something is helpful, or even where to buy specific air purifying systems, or any information that can be of benefit. We would want to share that.
Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah. I listen to a few different podcasts, and sometimes it's interesting to listen to podcasts because, like, okay, thanks for listening to the podcast. And by the way, if you make any decisions at all based on anything we said, we're not responsible whatsoever. Like, are we not adults here? Like, I listened to what you had to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well,
it's just kind of, no good deed goes unpunished. And if you happen to share something, you always have to have that caveat.
You always have to have the disclaimer, because it's even like talking about cash flows. You always want to point people back to their accountants, because those are the experts in specific fields, and that's why you have those particular partners. So to share ideas is one thing, but yes, you never want to step outside your expertise and present yourself as an expert in something that you're really not an expert in. But yet the information may be helpful. So
you're not going to see a podcast, Heather says, do it this way?
No. Heather might suggest do it this way, but each situation is different.
So for the average dentist and dental office, what do you see some of the big challenges from your perspective? You see many different offices, and just as a broad stroke. I know you don't like broad strokes, but
yeah. Well, obviously the lack of revenues is a huge problem right now. And the bank has come with relief, and the government has come with relief. There's a number of programs that are available. So that's the immediate issue. The unknowns around the regulations. So how a dentist would restructure to keep 6 feet of distance between patients, between staff, how to give staff comfort around some of the health issues. So again, air purification or negative pressure systems, PPE, ordering PPE, that's a huge challenge. How to ensure that you have the number of gowns you need. How are you going to wash them? So it's almost like an intricate dance move that's being mapped out, a floor plan, the renovations. How do you pay for those? What is the money coming in? What is the money going out? Where can you save money? It's a huge undertaking. So those wise dentists will be spending the time planning, assessing, working with their staff, ensuring that staff feels engaged still, that they know that they matter, and that the dentist is taking those things into consideration. So those things are I think the biggest challenges that dentists face. And to that end, and we have come to the table with our cash flow tool. So I have it right here. So this will be attached at the end of this session. I'll give you the PDF. It's interactive, so it will guide dentists through their expenses, the expenses that they might be able to cut back on. It will have suggestions, and as they go through and put in their numbers, it will also pull in all of the various relief programs that are available that they have indicated that they would be eligible for. And it will incorporate those into the cash flow as well. So there's room on operating lines, for instance. There's cash that's sitting in different bank accounts. It brings that in too. And at the end, it will...
so you're signed into your account so it can see all that?
No, you would input that.
I see. You input that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we did that, it would only be specific for BMO customers.
Oh,
right?
this is for
those
other people.
Well, for dentists,
the great unwashed.
But it hopefully will be a really great tool for dentists and other healthcare professionals, so that because part of the challenge is understanding what cash is going to be available, and so this pulls it all in together and creates one picture that dentists can work with, or other healthcare professionals, so that they can see what cash they really have. And at the end, if there is a shortfall still in cash, there are other options. Like, for instance, I know we were going to talk about the specific bank relief programs. So everybody has accessed probably the initial bank relief program with the 6-month interest only payments with a deferral of principal for up to 6 months. And increase in their operating lines of between 10 to 25%, depending on the amounts you're looking at. So a bump up in operating line, and CEBA, Canadian Emergency Business Account of $40,000 with up to $40,000 with 25% forgivable if the balance is paid by December 31st, 2022. And if not, then it's termed out over 3 years at 5%. So
2022, not 2021.
So. I think it's 2022, but wow. I'd have to check again. And people should always check in with their account manager at their primary bank for all those details. The application's online, and so they can fill it in online. And if there's any issues with it, they can get in touch with their relationship manager at their specific bank.
Yeah.
So those are static programs that are pretty much the same across all banks. And then getting back to the cash flow tool, if at the end of the assessment you're in a negative position, you can then look at accessing the co-managed loan, which is available up to $6.25 million. it's in conjunction with the EDC. So the Export Development Canada. So the export requirements have been waived specifically for this program, and it's the customized loan. So the healthcare professional, the dentist, should go to their account manager and discuss that. Well, I guess over the phone now, or 6 feet apart, wearing masks.
Yeah.
And discuss that.
Yeah, you're encouraging people to wear a mask to a bank.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's been a few jokes about the changes.
Yeah.
The changes in that. It's a new day, that's for sure. So there are options there. And I know we had talked briefly about CEWS, CEWS. So that's the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. Recently, I teamed up with MNP Krista Matthews and Sandy Adachi, both excellent accountants specializing in healthcare with MNP. And we went through and they gave a fantastic detailed walkthrough of the CEWS program, and also of the temporary wage supplement, which works in combination with that. It was the first one that was rolled out. And so together, to make a long story short, they net out, so that you're not exceeding the CEWS requirement. I believe it's 75%. Where's CEWS? 75% of I can't see it here now. Subsidy, 75% subsidy up to 12 weeks. So those are some of the and I can, once I have that, I can post that as well, the webinar for extra details.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, we'll put all that information beside your podcast, and we might get some questions. I'll pass them on to you, but yeah, I'm certainly cognizant of the fact that the best information is from your own bank manager, your own bank, because it's is very specific and very regional and very personal. Even though it's business banking, it's very personal.
Yes. Well, and frankly, the situation right now, it's not saying that you couldn't change banks midstream, but you would have to jump a lot of hurdles to do that. So if you're in strong position, and we've seen people have come to us that aren't banking with us, who have significant savings that could carry them through a year, 2 years, or more, just based on their cash in bank. I mean, we certainly can look at that. But typically speaking, if you are in that batten down the hatches mode, then you're going to want to stay with your own bank. You're going to want to settle in. You're going to want to see how things unfold, work through it, and get to a point of stability. And that does bring up another point, and that is the partners you surround yourself with as a healthcare professional. That is very significant. And sometimes, especially people right out of the gate, they will kind of gravitate to the lowest cost healthcare or professionals, like partners. So lawyers, accountants, consultants, say. Banks are a little bit different in that we don't have like that same, fee per hour. So you can come to me and I can be a resource, and I'm not charging you per hour. So, it's a little bit different with banks, but you still want you want professionals that you can talk to, that get back to you, that you feel supported, that you feel you're connected with, that you feel care. And our team, your team, and you want to feel like you're on a team. So that's vital, and that's something that I really emphasize. Occasionally, I'll go out and speak to the students at UVC, and that's something that I always bring up, because I just think it's really worth it to pay the extra fee to get a really good accountant or a really good lawyer. I've actually seen a lawyer go on vacation during a closing of a deal, and it's like a one-man shop, and everything goes screeching to a halt. You can just imagine the stress level of the dentist and the expenses that are mounting. So it's important. It matters.
No, absolutely. And it's kind of one of the things to keep in mind when you're talking to patients too, because I've been grinded by a couple patients, and like, how much for the root canal? Or it's like, no, don't worry. you can pay less. I am
Yeah,
not the
exactly.
cheapest.
You
Yeah,
kind of get what you pay for.
yeah. And you can pay more. I'm not the most expensive, but I'm not the cheapest. If honestly, if you want a cheaper guy, I'll
Yeah,
give you his or her name, and there you go, fill your boots.
yeah,
But you're gonna own my hide for this period of time, and yeah, usually by then, you've developed a relationship that they stay in. It's important. But yeah, and I've seen the opposite too, where from personal experience, you've been in a situation where someone knows how to bill extremely well and not necessarily deliver on services.
and
And
that's
you're
where
like,
reputation comes
wow,
in. Yeah, they
yeah,
need to have a good reputation, and it's good to ask around.
yeah,
There are healthcare professionals, or not healthcare professionals, but healthcare supporting professionals that I deal with all the time.
yeah.
And so, somebody asks me, I can, let them know who I deal
Yes.
with good results. I can never really recommend overtly, but I can certainly say who's in the industry and who I've seen, and there have been good results. So
When someone says "wow," pay attention.
exactly.
That's all I have to say. Like, who are you? Who's your accountant? Wow.
Yeah. Or
And
names
if they
that
say
keep
nothing
appearing.
else, then just okay. Yeah. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Packs are strong, and birds of feather kind of stick together, and so in
Yeah.
some regards, if you have an odd man out or an odd woman out in the team, sometimes that's just fine, and sometimes there's a reason why that is not the case. And I've
Yeah.
been
You
there.
want your, yeah.
Yeah, when your lawyer goes, "Wow, how much your accountant charge?" You know, you know. Oh
Exactly.
my God, my lawyer's guffawing at this bill.
Yeah, because you don't always know, because that information isn't always shared. And it really
Yes.
depends. Like for a lawyer, if you have a very complex, like several shareholders and there's some complex things going on, it can cost more and be well worth your while. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to compare, but I've also seen when you use people who are well known and work well together. So your banker, your lawyer, your accountant, and consultant,
It's a
and
well-oiled
you all
machine. You
know
guys
each
don't have
other.
to invest too much time figuring it
Yeah,
out, right?
a lot happens behind the scenes, and there's a really good feeling, and you can phone somebody up and that they're not dinging that client. You can phone up and say, hey, this situation, can you give me a little feedback, what's going on behind the scenes? And so you work together, and
Mm-hmm.
you're almost like a team behind the scenes, and that is very impactful. But
Mm-hmm.
the dentist doesn't always see that, so we do.
Oh, there's a lot we
We
don't
know.
see. Believe me.
No.
Once you get out of the mouth, everything's kind of foggy.
Yeah, and really you shouldn't have to see that, because it should all be working for your convenience. And so that's why we say, hey, you can hook us in with your accountant, and we will request whatever we need from your accountant and CC you for visibility. And it
Mm-hmm.
goes like clockwork. So
Now, Bank of Montreal bought Harrison Bank in the U.S. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, several years ago, and that's our arm. We've expanded into the U.S. And continue to expand. So it's a separate entity, but
Mm.
it is BMO at the same time.
So do you guys communicate? Do you have a sense of what's going on down there? The banking down there, like the banking culture down there is different than the banking culture up here, or
It
anything?
definitely is.
Yeah.
The banking system is so different in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So far more banks. Where the system in Canada, with a small number of stable banks,
Yeah.
we can maneuver. The government can maneuver in a much more efficient way in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
but totally different system. So I have been in touch with colleagues in the US, not that much. My focus is BC, and so that's where my expertise is mostly. It's really just in caring for the healthcare community, knowing what's going on there, how I can serve them. So that's really where most of my knowledge is, and most of my focus is. Although I did call a brand new office, our brand new office in LA, just to chat with them about a healthcare professional that was down there and finishing up residency and moving up to BC. So there is collaboration that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to have those ties. So, but my focus is here, so I do this well.
Perfect. No, that's great. Yeah, no, and it's interesting how quickly things change. 6
Yes.
feet now, PPE,
Yeah.
negative pressure, bioaerosols, all stuff in February that wouldn't mean anything, and now those things are ingrained in our
Vital.
head. Yeah, I mean, 6 feet, you're not
Mhm.
talking about a grave anymore. You're talking about where you're sitting in relation to somebody.
Yeah. Or
Isn't that
2 meters
nuts?
if you're young enough.
Sorry?
Or 2 meters if you're young enough.
Yes, yeah, 2 meters, yeah.
Or a hockey stick.
Yes, yeah,
Or
yeah.
take a hockey stick into the grocery store
Mm-hmm,
and hockey sticks to surround you to make
mm-hmm.
sure everybody stays
Yeah,
where
yeah,
they're supposed to.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
some naughty ones. They wander into your space, but for the most part, people are good.
Yeah. So what about cash?
What
Is
about
all
cash?
money dirty now?
Well, I heard an interesting idea
Yes.
put out there of getting a big tub or a plexiglass box,
Yeah.
filling it with diluted bleach, and telling people to put cash into the box. So we're definitely, as a bank, encouraging people to use tap. And we've teamed up with Moneris, or they're our partner, and so they have they have their operation to upgrade people so that they have tap if for some reason they don't have tap at this point. But I honestly think I've been to like a post office that didn't have tap, and I said, really, you don't have tap? That should be something that I think needs to happen, in my opinion. But I think you take a risk when you're handing money back and forth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
and
look, if anyone out there has trouble and they have too much cash, I will take it off your hands as a service.
and you'll have the big plexiglass. You'll get plexiglass
Oh,
sterilized water ready.
yeah. I'll even have fireworks going off when they hand me enough cash. But no.
Well, I'll definitely put the word out.
Yeah. See, we have some takers. But yeah, no, it's interesting. So the tap amounts, there's ceilings to those, are there not?
Yes, there is. There is a ceiling. Offhand, I would say,
But
I
they're
believe
flexible
$100.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right. There is, but most of the purchases you would make would be under $100.
But what about for a dental office?
Yeah, for a dental office, it's a good point. You probably can't get away with just tap for a dental office.
Unless you're gonna go tap 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 tap. Stop.
It would be interesting to see. I haven't checked into that, and I haven't seen any communication to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be interesting to check in with Moneris. I'm just making a mental note to see if they have any plans to increase the amount for a tap, because of course the risk is that somebody will steal your card, tap it, and there you are with this couple of $1,000 bill, and it wasn't you. And that's the risk, and that's why they put the caps on. But these are unprecedented times, so I mean, who knows what will change with that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we might see.
Well, and speaking of different countries too, I think the codes in Canada for credit cards are a little bit tougher and harder than they are in the US or something like that. I remember there was something along those lines of the bank cards, because I know when I've been down in the States sometime, and it seemed way easier with the cards down there than it did up here. But
yeah,
what do I know?
But then again, that you got to keep in mind that there's such a variance across banks.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the reason why is that sometimes they will have more flexibility, but you'll run the gamut. You'll have banks that are really progressive and others that are less so. So it's again tied in with the banking system.
Okay.
And the difference.
Yeah.
Our banking system is a very stable system.
Yes.
It also is maybe not quite as flexible in some ways.
Yes.
Maybe takes longer to maneuver in some ways, but the trade-off is that during the subprime mortgage years, 2008, 2009, we fared very well. Our system was put to the test, and we were very stable and rode through that system. And I think it's something we can take comfort in. And the way that the bank can roll, or the government can roll out initiatives through the bank,
Yes.
all working together. We moved fairly quickly for what a big,
Yes,
um,
that
entity.
government loan, the
Yep.
$40,000, that was like 3 questions through my bank.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, oh, I gotta have all my tax receipts and all this jazz to do it. And you're like, that's it? Like,
Yeah.
and so that was fantastic. And that was government and the banks working very well together, because I could just imagine if I was on a government of Canada site, it could have been tough. And
Yeah.
it was very efficient. And so I
Yeah.
love that. But yeah, speaking of the subprime mortgage issue in the US, so just to give you a personal perspective of that, I was down in the US 2005 to 2007 doing my endo program, and I'm down there on a student visa. So Joel
Right.
Nobody can't earn a cent down there, and make sure you got to return tickets, son. I was in Texas, but I could go into a bank and I could get a mortgage.
Wow.
It was nuts. It was like, I can't have a job, but I can, because it was weird. And you're like, you can have a mortgage, you have a mortgage. I couldn't buy health insurance outside of the school system because I was over the age of 30 and I was there on a student visa and like no income. So because when I was at Baylor, they were saying, which is now Texas A&M, they were saying, oh, the healthcare plan for students is horrible. You want to get a private one, you get a private one. So I was like, okay, well, I'll get a private one. And then I went talk to a guy. Well, the private one is like, yeah, you don't qualify. You're over 30 and you're a student. Forget it. No one's going to cover you. Stay on the system. And I did. But anyway, so I'm down there in the States, can't earn a cent, but I could get a mortgage to buy a house, which was bizarre. And from a Canadian's perspective, and some of the stuff I might be wrong with, some of the Americans might be like, oh, you got fed a bunch of baloney. But they weren't allowed to ask the banks my status in the US if I went to a loan. You know what I mean? Like, so whereas in Canada, it's like, you go to a bank and it's like, well, we have to know you're a Canadian. We have to know your social insurance number. We have to know this. We have to know that. We're throwing a lot of bucks your way, sunshine. We need to know that you're Tom, Dick, or Harry, right? And it didn't seem that was the case there. And then when I had the banking crisis is when I came back, and I had, a bolus of money went down with the States. So I had a little bit of money. We were renting a place up here. And I remember on the CBC News, they said all banks stocks have just gone through the floor, but the Canadian banks are sound. But just because everyone's so negative about US banks, all banks look bad. But a sound investment right now is the Canadian banks. And I had this, not a huge chunk of change, but I had a chunk of change. So, okay, well, I'm going to stick it on a bank, the bank we happen to be banking with at that time. Man, I look like the best investor in the world because it just went whoop, a few months later. Went whoop so much that I realized, I'm not going to invest in any more companies after that because I just hit it out of the park. Done. I don't know how I did that. Anyway, interesting. It's an interesting, different dynamic because the banks really don't make money selling mortgages. They make their money keeping mortgages. Whereas in the US, I definitely got the perspective that you made a lot of money selling a mortgage, like whoever's selling the mortgage. And it wasn't this, you don't get that in Canada. I mean, I know we have mortgage brokers up here. I'm not really sure what they do, but one big difference too was that in Canada, you can't write off the interest for your mortgage. So all Canadians want to write off their mortgage tomorrow, right? It's like right away. And in the US, you can write off the interest for your mortgage. So when I was down there, they would buy a new car or go on a nice holiday and they'd extend their mortgage a little bit more. And that's how the housing crisis hit, because you never pay off your mortgage and it stays that way. And then all of a sudden the value of the house goes down. It's like now you have a mortgage for $800,000 and your house is worth, $650. The bank now wants $250 cash because you got more than, and it was, the world went upside down.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting when you get hyper economics.
Well, and in Canada, I always think we tend to err more on the side of caution.
Yes.
One person bumps their head, we all wear helmets.
Yes.
That just is a little bit the way we are. But in banking, it definitely paid off in keeping our banking system stable. And really, behind the scenes, the request for information is really what it helps us define the risk. And so that's why we ask for more information. The more information we have, the less risk there is, because it's known. One of the definitions of risk is unknown. So once we know, then, and that's really a good advertisement as to why you should provide information that's requested to your banker, because then it really does impact your risk rating. So you don't want a higher risk, because it really translates into higher rates and more oversight, whereas a better risk rating indicates obviously that you're in better position. So just a little bit of insight there behind the scenes. There's a reason for everything.
Yes.
And when you step back and see the bigger picture, having a stable banking system goes a whole long way in crisis.
No, absolutely. And it's a bit of a scary time in dentistry, because what you just mentioned, what we don't know is risk. And that's what dentistry is full of in buckets right now.
Yeah.
And conceivably, we could have a few offices hit the wall.
It could happen. Sometimes when businesses are on the brink, this is going to be the thing that will tip them over to the other side. I think another thing that in the past, one of the mitigations for the risk in dentistry is you could always say that a dentist owner can always go work as an associate.
Yeah.
So the impact to associates, it brings us to another topic. Sadly, that could be something that we're going to see is associates being called back slowly. So a longer delay as dentists are trying to cut costs, as they're trying to recover these last 8+ months of no revenue, and of the hit to revenue in the decrease in the number of potential clients or patients that they can see. So, and the output for for additional equipment is another consideration. So associates, not only will they have the potential of working less in the next little while, they may also take a hit to their remuneration. So that's another adjustment that's happening, which is unfortunate for associates.
No, absolutely. When that pen hits a paper, it might be a bit of a different number than what we thought we were going to see before. Well, Heather, this has been, sorry?
I wanted to say something positive, though.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, please do.
After talking about those downers, on
the other hand, the sunny side.
I have to say, before we wrap it up, people, human beings, we always bounce back. And so it's been difficult. There's been a lot of heavy burden. There's been a lot of negative impacts. But, people adjust and situations adjust. And, even as you're looking behind the scenes, okay, how can we speed this up? This is the new reality, but how can we make it better? That's what we're going to see. We're going to see people do what they do very well in crisis, and that is dig deep and start looking for the best and start adjusting and making the best of the situation. And I think over time, yes, it may be a new normal, but I think everybody is going to find that once we're through the clouds, that the sun will come out again. It may look different, the landscape may be different, but I just have such a belief in the ability of people to turn things around that I think ultimately we're going to be okay.
Yes. No, I agree with you. And you can OD on COVID information, so it's really nice to take a break. I'm on a couple of chat groups with dentists. And honestly, I think they're surprised. I take a break for like half a day, and there's like 80 messages. You're like, I just don't want to know anymore.
Yeah.
That magic mask isn't out there. That magic mask is not out there. That magic deal is not out there. That magic this is not out there. And you know what? It's okay. If it really is that good, they'll say it twice.
Yeah, you'll find it.
Take a break. Enjoy the sunshine. And I was actually just talking to a dentist, endodontist in California, and she was going to open her office brand new right now in LA, which is an extraordinarily tough market for endodontists. And she's like, well, it is what it is. And you're like, oh my goodness, it's so refreshing, so positive to hear. I'm kind of down and, you know, kicking myself a little bit, and you're like, wow, it really was picked me up speaking to her, because like, well, you know, just like what you were saying, let's just you know, bounce back.
Yeah, and the bank is here to help in any way we can. And we recognize the pressure our clients and others are under. And we are going to share pertinent information. We're going to do everything we can to pitch in and keep things positive and do what we can.
Yes, and one last plug for that MNP podcast that you did for the CEWS application. I think that application is potentially quite complex and could be difficult. And that podcast, you dove deep into it, and it seemed to be quite helpful. Is that right?
That's true. And I will get that posted as soon as they're just finishing off some of the details, like some of editing and different things, and then they will make it available. So I'll make it available as soon as it's in my hands. And other things I think are relevant and helpful.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Heather.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no,
It's always great to touch base.
Yes, it is. It's always good chatting and sharing information with each other. And let's go out there and catch some more of this sunshine. We've got some good weather today.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know when people on PFX ask questions. And It's been a wonderful session. Thanks again.
All right. Okay.
All right.
See you soon.
Yes.
Bye.